and welcome to this first video in this new series that I'm putting together, where I'm going to try and answer some of the many questions that I get on a daily basis via social media. So this video is not going to be fancy, there's no high production value here, it's just me sat in this theater, which is really cool, answering your questions and trying to get across some practical knowledge and some practical information that will assist you if you're either trying to be a private investigator for the first time, you're interested in a career change, you've already done 30 years as a police officer, and now you want to change careers and go into the investigation industry. So I appreciate the opportunity to answer these questions. I appreciate the opportunity to engage with you in this way. I don't always have the time to answer the questions that I receive via DM or via social media. So it's great to have this opportunity to do it this way. So keep your questions coming, and I will keep answering these questions probably on a weekly basis, but more frequently if I get them more often. And we'll try and get all of these questions answered, create a little bit of engagement, some collaboration, maybe some mentorship, and try and make the industry a little bit better, a little bit more open and less secretive. So the first three questions that I'm going to address today, which are the questions that I tend to get most often, that is, how do I start in this industry? Am I too old or too young to begin being an investigator? And do I need any special skills or any special training in order to become a private investigator? In order to start answering those questions, I will say that I believe that everybody has the opportunity to become an investigator if that's what you want to do. You have to really have a good look at yourself and at the industry and decide if this is the right career path for you. Some people are going to find it easier than others depending on the traits and the characteristics that you already have, your previous training, your previous experience and knowledge, the personality that you have or that you've developed over the years, and whether or not you know anybody in the industry, whether or not you have any contacts, what your network looks like, and how motivated you are to put time and energy into this. But it is possible for anybody. It doesn't really matter what stage of life you're in or what stage of career you're in. You can make this work for you. I will say also that the investigation industry typically and traditionally is not particularly collaborative, and finding mentorship within this industry can be very difficult. I am hoping to change that through being more collaborative and being more open, and I'm hoping that this is the first step in that process to encourage investigators to talk to each other a little bit more, to be more willing to mentor others, and also for people that are not yet in this industry or that are coming into this industry for the first time, to reach out to people that would be potential mentors or at least role models and ask them for help, offer something in return, listen to what they have to say and integrate yourself into that world, start to build a network, but be prepared to learn, be prepared to, be on a fairly steep learning curve as you enter this world. So the first thing I ask anybody that comes to me and says, how do I get to do what you do? How do I get to be in this industry and become an investigator? I ask them, well, who are you? What do you bring to the table? What experience, skills, personality trait, what background do you have, and how well do you know yourself? How self-aware are you, and how do you know what personality traits you have that are most suited to this industry, and also what personality traits and what characteristics do you have that are not suited to this industry and that you would need to change? People don't like to look at themselves for fear of what they'll see. But in this case, it's very, very important that you develop a really strong self-awareness and that you're able to understand whether or not you're able to be objective, what prejudices you have, what biases you have. And we all have them. We all have prejudices. We all have biases. We all have areas of our lives where we're not able to be particularly objective. And this comes down to partly to our upbringing, our education, our socioeconomic background, our peers, our family, so many factors that influence who we are as people, how we see the world, how we make the decisions that we make, what our judgment is like, how objective we are, and how we move through the world on a day-to-day basis, communicating, talking to people, being self-aware, and using our judgment to make decisions based on the information that we receive. One of the most important aspects of being an investigator is acting in an ethical way and behaving with integrity. If your integrity and your ethics are all in question, then this may not be the career for you. And believe me, there will be times when you become an investigator, and even those of us that have been doing this for years and years and years, where our ethics and our integrity is called into question quite frequently. You will be provided with opportunities, you'll be provided with challenges where people will approach you and offer different ways of obtaining information from you, or having you obtain information on their behalf that are not ethical. And you will have to deal with those challenges. You will have to ask yourself whether or not any amount of money is worth that for you. Any amount of compromise, the risk to your career, the risk to your family, the risk to your personal safety, whether these things are worth it to you for whatever amount of money you're being offered, or whatever thing it is that you're being offered in return. And that, in a lot of cases, does happen depending on the types of investigation that you're involved in. If there is even a question that you are susceptible to bribery or blackmail, then this is probably not the career for you. You're going to be dealing with a variety of different characters. You're going to be in a number of situations that are going to make you uncomfortable, where even your client may be unethical. It may not just be the people that you're investigating that are either criminals or are not ethical people. Your clients may also fall into that category as well. So you have to be discerning about who you are, about your ability to trust your own judgment, your ability to trust your own self-control, and determine whether or not this is something that could bring into question your integrity, and whether or not you're able to trust your morals and your ability to act ethically no matter what situation you're put into. The issue around morality, ethics, and integrity is really at the core of being an investigator. And if you're not sure that you can rely on yourself to act with the utmost integrity at all times, then this career probably isn't for you. So really it comes down to knowing yourself, knowing who you are, being able to take a real good hard look in the mirror and figure out whether or not this industry is for you, whether or not you have the moral courage, the emotional resilience, the moral fortitude to enter this industry and to be able to go forward successfully and maintain those characteristics and that kind of ethical behavior throughout your career. So when we talk about traits and characteristics of an investigator, or we talk about whether or not somebody possesses the traits and characteristics that would be best suited to a career as an investigator, there are certain characteristics and traits that I would say, if you have them, becoming an investigator may be easier for you, because if you don't have them, you're going to have to take the time to develop at least some of these in order to go forward and be successful. So I'll run through the ones that I think are important. If you don't possess these, or there may be others that you see as being more important, and I value your input on that. If you want to share your comments below this video, share your comments on social media, I would welcome that discussion. And this is by no means an exhaustive list, but it's just some of the traits that I consider to be important. The first one I would say is objectivity. The ability to determine whether or not the information you're receiving is fact, is supposition, is somebody's belief, is based on somebody else's confirmation bias, or what somebody else wants to be true, or what somebody else wants you to believe based on the information they want to receive back from you. Now, this is something that is not always easy to develop. You need to get past your own prejudices and biases first, and then you need to become adept at reading other people in terms of their body language, their honesty, being able to fact check what somebody else is telling you. And one of the first things I always do when I receive a new investigation is I first of all investigate my client. I always tell them that this is what I'm going to do. As soon as I receive their information, I say to them, I'm going to investigate you first. I need to know that the person that I'm dealing with is somebody of integrity. I don't take investigations from somebody that's a criminal or somebody that is involved in a criminal group or somebody that's going to use the information that I provide to them to hurt others or to cause damage to somebody else's reputation, somebody else's family, somebody else's business. I'm not interested in doing that kind of work, and I turn that kind of work away. Inevitably, somebody is going to use the information you provide in a court case for somebody that hasn't necessarily done anything wrong. You're not investigating a criminal group. They're going to be using the information in a civil case where there is no clear-cut right or wrong. It's just somebody trying to gain a personal advantage for whatever reason. One of the first things that you have to decide and you have to know is what kind of investigations will fit your personality. What kind of investigations will fit the kind of traits and personality type that you have. So objectivity is the first one. Tenacity, the ability to continue investigating when you're not sure where else to go. You don't really know where else you can look, where you may not yet have the resources or the knowledge to understand what kind of information is available to you, but that doesn't mean that you should quit. Now, conversely, it's also really, really important to know when you should give up. So when is the time to stop? When are you beating a proverbial dead horse? When is the time to either keep going or when is the time to stop? This is one of those areas where it's not necessarily a personality trait, but it is a characteristic of your personality. If you're somebody that is tenacious, somebody that is determined or stubborn and is just determined to keep going, and that can sometimes be a really good thing or a really bad thing. So understanding where you fall in that spectrum, do you tend to give up fairly easily if you don't find what you're looking for straight away? Or do you tend to keep going forever and ever and ever when really it would be clear to anybody else looking from the outside that the information that you're looking for is not available to be found? It either doesn't exist, it's been erased, it's been removed, the information that you're basing that investigation on is erroneous, or you should be looking in a different direction. So in addition to self-awareness, tenacity, objectivity, one of the most important traits that an investigator needs to have, it's not just a nice to have, you have to have this, and that is emotional intelligence. There's a number of different personality traits that fall into this category. Empathy, compassion, the ability to actively listen to and hear what somebody is really saying to you or what somebody's really trying to tell you, sometimes just through the use of body language. Sometimes somebody is fearful of telling you information. Sometimes they may be trying to get you to probe for more information. They don't want to say what it is that they really need to find out. And you have to be really good at interviewing. You have to be good at hearing what somebody is trying to tell you when sometimes they don't have the words to give you that information. Or they're telling you exactly what they need and you're not listening because you already have it in your mind, you're already doing the investigation in your head before they've finished telling you the story, or you already think you know the answer before they've finished telling you exactly what it is that they need. So somebody can tell you a certain story, they can give you their perspective. You always have to understand that in investigation, unlike in police work, we often only get one side of the story. You're not going to take somebody's complaint and then go and arrest the other party and then interview them and get their side of the story and make your case based on the facts that you receive from both sides. Investigation in the private sector often doesn't work that way. You're going to hear one side of the story, you're going to investigate based on the facts that you can pull out from that side of the story, and then you're going to hand the results over to whoever is your client and maybe never know what they do with the results that you've provided them. So it's quite different, particularly if you've come out of law enforcement and you're going into private investigation. This can be one of the areas that people struggle because you're no longer getting both sides of the story. You're getting one person's account, you're having to pull out the facts and deal with the truth, try and figure out what the reality is of this situation, and then base your investigation on that reality and provide the results to them, being very aware and being very conscious that you're only dealing with one person's side of the story. So being able to use that emotional intelligence to hear what that person is saying, to be empathetic, but not to fall victim to really getting sucked into somebody's story, really feeling emotionally involved, feeling like you need to advocate for them, like you need to go out and be their knight in shining armor. That's not your job. Your job is to establish the facts, provide those facts to them, and let them do whatever they will with that information. So the final and most important trait that I would say is honesty. You need to be honest with your client right from the start. Make sure that your expectations and make sure that their expectations are aligned. Make sure that they don't think that you're capable of doing something more than you can actually provide. And you need to be honest with them. And if there's something that they're asking you to do that either does not align with your morality, does not align with your ethics and your idea of what ethical behavior is, which sometimes can be personal to each individual person, you need to be able to say that to them and say, I do not consider that this aligns with my morals. You're going to have to go and find another investigator. I do not feel that this is something that I'm experienced enough to take on. I do not feel that I've got the knowledge of the industry that you're asking me to investigate. I do not feel that I have the technical knowledge to be able to help you with this problem, but I can put you in touch with somebody else that can help you. Being absolutely honest is vital. And the honesty starts with yourself, starts with your client. It definitely starts with your peers, and it goes right through to the people that you're investigating, how you present yourself within the industry, how you present yourself, how you gather evidence, how you pass that evidence on. Again, it comes down to morality, integrity, and ethics. It all comes down to honesty. But the first place that honesty starts is with your client. Now, having talked about traits and characteristics, let's talk about skills and what particular skill set you need to be able to go into the type of investigation that you want to do. Now, depending on what type of investigator you want to be, you may find that it's something that you know very little about. You like the idea of it, and that's the first question that you need to ask yourself is, why do you want to do that particular type of investigation? Is it something that you feel that you're already good at? So let's say you've worked in a bank for 15 years and you want to leave that bank and now you want to go and be an investigator. You want to work in the financial crime industry. So you would be very well suited to something like investigating money laundering or organized crime, investigating even things like human trafficking and modern slavery. All the different ways that financial investigation could fall into one of those other types of investigation. Lots and lots of opportunities for people that have been involved in either law enforcement or financial crime. But let's say, for example, that you don't have that kind of background, that you're just coming out of university and you're not really sure what kind of investigation you want to go into. So you don't really know what kind of skills or what kind of training to go into next. I'll give you an example of a case study that I had. A young woman that came to me. She was just coming out of university. She'd been studying psychology at university. She had decided throughout her studies that she wanted to go into the field of investigation, but she really felt that she had no skills that she could transfer into that industry. One of the first questions, of course, that I asked her was, well, what do you bring to the table? What have you done? What work experience do you have? What volunteer work have you done? Did you head up any committees or groups while you were at university? Do you have any special skills or any special characteristics or personality traits that you feel would be suited to a certain kind of investigation? She really didn't feel like she had anything to offer, but she did say that she was quite familiar with the online world, quite familiar with social media, and in fact she'd been running a blog for a number of years dealing with the buying and selling of fashion clothing and buying clothing on eBay and buying clothing on different auction sites and then selling it. She'd made some decent money from it too, being able to put herself through part of her university course, developed some good writing skills, developed a fairly decent network of people within the fashion industry and people within the online world and people on social media. So she had quite a following. Now, when I look at somebody like that and I look at their skills, their abilities, their experience, immediately I start to think, okay, so you have some fairly decent knowledge of the fashion industry. You have fairly decent knowledge when it comes to social media and online research, and you've also developed some fairly good knowledge and background in the supply chain of fairly expensive brand label clothing. So how could you translate that into investigation? Well, I know from my experience that there are quite a few large brand label companies that have a problem with counterfeit clothing, have a problem with people buying and selling counterfeit goods online. It affects everything from their reputation to the value of their clothing, the value of the what they're able to price at, the value of their supply chain, and really can create some problems for them reputation wise when it comes to the media, investors and clients. So to me, that would be an area that would be a great place to start for that individual. So my advice to that young woman was to develop her passion, her skill, her knowledge for the fashion industry, the online supply chain industry, and social media, and her skills around being able to research in that area to create a package for companies that, large scale Fortune 500 companies, brands that are well known, expensive designer labels who typically are subject to people counterfeiting their clothing and selling that through online auction sites. She did that. She developed her skills as an investigator in that space. She started to reach out to some people in the supply chains of these organizations. She also started to reach out to people that dealt with modern slavery, human trafficking, and tried to figure out where the supply chains were for these items of clothing that were being counterfeit and were entering these online auction sites. And she's now actually starting to build out her reputation, starting to build out her business in the investigation world, dealing with clients that have a problem with counterfeiting and are losing massive amounts of money annually to people buying counterfeit goods when they think they're real designer labels online. And she's managing to tap into the knowledge and the experience that she's now developing, both in the supply chain industry, the fashion industry, and even in the modern slavery industry. And so she's not only making a difference to business, but she's also doing something really valuable in the world that ties into her own personal set of values and really aligns with her morality. So for those of us that are more experienced, it can be quite easy to put these pieces together and figure out, based on somebody's skill set and somebody's knowledge and somebody's experience, where would be a good fit for them in the investigation world. But for those of you either coming into it from the beginning or coming into it as a change of career, it can be a little more difficult. It can also be difficult aligning a lack of technological knowledge with a lack of real world experience. And again, that's something that mentorship can assist you with. I would recommend reaching out to somebody that either is a mentor or could be a role model and asking them to assist you. And so what's the first steps that you can take, the first practical steps to take you onto your path as an investigator into this new career, into this new environment? The first thing I would say is identify a mentor, identify somebody that's a role model. There's lots and lots of online courses, online training that you can take to start to develop very simple things. There's lots and lots of inexpensive programs. You can take everything from investigative interviewing to report writing, take courses such as surveillance, online research, online investigation, lots and lots of ways that you can start to develop your skills from behind the keyboard before you even step outside and start spending real money, investing in more complex skill sets depending on what you want to do that may or may not even be relevant to you depending on where it is you want to go and what kind of investigation you want to get into. And maybe start by asking yourself, how do you best learn? How do you best receive information? Because some of us are visual learners, some of us learn best by listening, some of us learn best by just reading something and repeating that, following an online course, and all of these different methodologies are available to you. So decide, again, use your self-awareness to figure out how you best learn, how you best receive information, who would be a good mentor for you, where is the information that's accessible to you that's either within your price range or within your locality, depending on how you want to receive that information. But most of all, take that first step. decide who you are, decide who you're going to be as an investigator, figure out the path that you want to take, and realize that you do have something unique. You do have a skill set that's valuable. Even if it's nothing to do with investigation, you do have something important to bring to the table. And anybody can be an investigator. And there's lots of people like myself that are out there and are available and are willing to help you. So just reach out. So I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope it was valuable to you. Please leave comments. Please leave any other questions that you have either on my social media or within YouTube, and I can answer those for you. And hopefully I'll do another of these videos next week. Thanks for watching, guys.